Hi everyone, I'm Paul Kinlan and I'm with Paul Lewis today.
Hello.
Hello. We're here from sunny London, rainy London.
Miserable London, to be honest.
Yes, it's a little bit crazy. And today we are talking about Chrome apps and web intents. Our normal producer, Paul, I was going to say.
Another Paul. Let's be honest, it's easier if everybody's called Paul. We say this every week and it's actually true. Easier if everybody's a Paul. So let's just call him Paul LePage.
Paul LePage? Pete LePage.
Pete LePage, all right.
So anyway, we're in our brand new London studio. It's pretty cool. We pretty like it. It's like a little pod.
Yeah.
And we're two Pauls, so it's like two
Pauls in a pod.
Yes.
Yes.
I've been planning that joke all day, not telling anyone about this.
And you've, just dropped it. Boom.
Yes. So, anyway, yes, let's get started properly.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to talk about web intents and how web intents is a core integral part of the Chrome apps ecosystem. So over the last couple of weeks, we've been running Chrome app sessions. Chrome apps are a way that we're trying to make these web applications that you develop normally with HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, look and feel native on the user system. And one of the things that we've been pushing inside Chrome, at least, is the idea of web intents. And so, what are web intents?
That's a good question. What are web intents?
Yes.
They sort of fall into two categories, don't they? Like inter-application communication is one of the things that you use it for, and application discovery. Right?
Yes.
Should we nail each one in turn?
Yes. Shall we do that? So we'll start off with a little quick demo. We have a nice little video transition effect as well, which is going to be pretty cool if we do it correctly.
Look at
that. That's pretty cool. So this is my screen, and I'm going to show you some stuff about web intents. So we have a basic application called ImageMaker. And it's a simple application. It doesn't do much other than trying to orchestrate actions on images. Now, with a traditional application, when you build integrations to third-party systems like, say, Google Drive, you have to do a deep JavaScript-based or maybe a server-side-based integration with the service.
So you've got like tokens and all these API requests, and there's just tons of work. And this is like per service or per application that you want to integrate with, right?
Yeah, so hopefully this will work. I just realized I've deleted all my extensions, so this might work. So, Cloud File Picker, this is an application that we've installed.
So all you did there was you just clicked on that box and Chrome's taken over?
So basically, our application has asked Chrome for a list of applications that support the ability to pick an image from somewhere.
Aha, okay.
So it's pretty cool. And as you can see, we actually have, we have no applications installed, so we'll go and install one. This list comes from the Chrome Web Store. Applications in the Chrome Web Store can declare their intent, what they can support, actions that they can support. So this application is saying that I can support the ability to pick an image from somewhere. So we'll add it in, we'll launch our application. And if I'm all logged in, oh, here we go, this is awesome. Let's pick that image. I believe I have copyright to that image. So we brought our image into our application. It's pretty cool because we can do some other stuff. So we can say, I'm going to edit this image.
Okay.
So we ask, again, the browser to say, are there a list of applications that I can use to edit images? And again, in this case, there aren't any, but we can install one. And there we go. So, hello. As we can see, it's updated there. We're just going to send it back to our application. Hello.
So, I mean, that happened really quickly. So what happened was you dispatched an intent. The first intent was like, hey, are there any applications that can pick images for me?
Yeah.
And then the second thing, once you got that image data back, is you said, is there anything out there that can also edit images for me? Right. And then, so then when we sent that off to ImageMaker, it made the changes and it sent the data back, the updated image back to your ImageMaker application, right?
Yes.
And all the communication there, the inter-application communication was done with web intents.
Web intents, all JavaScript inside the client.
Wait, if only, is the code simple to use?
The code is very simple, my friend.
Oh, it's a dream come true.
So let's have a quick look. So index.js, there's about 30 lines of code in this application.
Okay.
And all we really have to do is ignore the fact that I've called startActivity.call. I've just been playing around with different syntax methods. But essentially, we just call startActivity on an object, well, on the window.navigator activity.
Okay, so we call window.navigator.startActivity, and it looks like the second parameter that you've got there is the intent itself.
Yes, so we've defined the intent here. This is the old syntax, and we're going to show you today building a proper Chrome app, not a normal web app, a Chrome app.
Okay.
Exactly what's happened, what's going to happen in the way that we're kind of pushing the spec forward. But we have an intent object with the type pick of image. So we basically asked the browser, is there a service out there that can pick images?
Huh. So really we're talking about two lines of code here, right? Because we've got this create an intent, which we sort of define these things, and I guess we're going to talk about what those are. And then the next thing is to say to the navigator.start activity with that intent, and it goes off and does the thing.
Yeah.
That looks pretty easy to me, mate.
It is pretty easy. The interesting thing is that the way that we've been kind of pushing web intents is that actually this is all on the web, right? So it's like HTML-based web application to HTML-based web application. And a lot of people have asked for the ability to bridge to native applications, right? So they want to kind of talk to their, Photoshop, those types of apps. And whilst we don't have that direct bridge right now, Chrome applications is like the next step along, where Chrome applications look and feel like they're installed, or they will do, not right now on the Mac, but we're going to go through this in a bit as well. But they'll look like they're native applications on the system. So you could launch an application from your browser, and it would look like it's just talking to a normal native app, and it's communicating over web intents.
Nice.
So it's pretty cool. I think we should start with the demo, though, shall we?
Oh, yeah.
Actually show how to do this.
Yeah.
Yep. So the first thing that most people want to do is, well, I'll back up a little bit. There are two things that normally happen. One, an application broadcasts like a request out to say, hey, I need to share this link. And then there's another application on the other side which says, I can receive links that are sent to me. And we're going to start with the first one, basically. We're going to start with the ability to actually share a link out to another application. Now, this application could be a website, or it could be a native, or say a Chrome app at least. So we'll start. Hopefully everyone can see my screen okay. I'm going to jump down a little bit because I think we've got my face in the way. But we'll start off with Yeoman, right? So actually we won't start with Yeoman. We'll make a directory called invoke. You need to tell me if I make any spelling mistakes, because
I'm watching. All eyes on you, mate.
like a hawk.
All right.
So invoke. So we're now in that directory. We'll use a tool that Adi Osmani and Paul Irish built the other week called Yeoman.
Yeoman.io, if you've not come across it, it's a brilliant way of creating your apps. So you should definitely check that out.
Yes. So basically, we're using Yeoman to bootstrap all the kind of the legwork that you need to make your Chrome app. So we'll start off with this Yeoman init. What should we call the application?
Invoke. Let's
invoke.
do it.
Yeah, that's it. Invoke. Oh, app is the description. And then it's just going to ask me about the different types of APIs that I want to use.
So would this create the manifest for you?
Yeah, so Chrome applications come with a manifest, some icons, some localized descriptions. If we look at this now, so we'll just go into the app directory and clear the screen, but do ls. We have the locals directory. The two icons we need, a 16 pixel icon and a 128 pixel icon, the index file, and some other kind of bootstrap code.
Cool. So if you've been watching over the past few weeks, one of the first ones we did, first sessions, we created the Hello World application, and we've just done pretty much the same deal in one line on the command line.
So we should probably load this up, I think. Oops. Desktop. Web Intents live demos. This is my little folder for doing all things live. There we are. Invoke. We'll see the application called invoke here. We invoke it, and it doesn't do much at all, right? It's just a screen. It's a window screen that looks
pretty blank, to be honest.
Pretty blank, pretty boring.
Like
so should we make it look cool? Like my face?
Like your face most days.
Nice, thanks, man.
No worries, bro.
Burn me on live in front of millions of people. Thousands of people. I don't know how many we got. But anyway, let's get going with the code, right? So essentially, this is our application. We want to add a button which shares, invokes the intent, but we want to kind of share some data with it. So we'll have an input file, an input type equals URL, called URL, and then we'll just share that out. I'll say up front, some of this code is not going to be the sexiest code. We're not going to use add event listener and all that type of stuff. We're just going to kind of do it as quickly as possible. So let's view the index file. As we can see, we just have an invoke.
Okay.
Looks like what we saw on the screen a minute ago. So let's add this in. Script source equals index.js. I'm doing this for a very special reason.
Should be presumably content security policy, my friend.
Indeed, content security policy. So content security policy means you can't inline JavaScript. We have this in Chrome applications because Chrome apps have elevated access to APIs, which we would never normally have on a web page. And we don't want people to do script injection. So you have to have everything in your own script. So let's index.js. Now, what was the code? So that's our JavaScript code. We make sure the file is, oops-a-daisy. Make sure the file is made. Let's put input type equals URL, ID equals URL. There we are. So that's our input type. Let's save that out. Go back. Standard HTML kind of things that you'd expect. Let's make a button. ID equals share. Call it share. Its original name again.
Does what it says on the tin, though.
Yeah, it does what it says on the tin. Yeah. So it's pretty bland, pretty boring, but you'll see what happens, right? So let's onload. So we're basically doing the window.onload event here, and all we're going to do is hook up the events.
So we're going to capture the URL.
Yep.
And then we're going to say, when you click on the share button, we now actually like to invoke an intent to actually share.
Yes, exactly right. It's all pretty simple stuff. So var share equals. This is like when I write with a piece of paper and a pen and piece of paper. I have to speak out every single word that
If I'm honest, I'm terrified of paper nowadays because I can't Command Z or Control Z when I write something.
Yeah. Do you ever get that thing where your hand kind of like cramps up?
Yeah.
Because
it's like I don't write anymore. I haven't done this for years.
Share.onClick. So when the user clicks the share button, we will call this function. Again, it's not the sexiest code in the world, but var I equals new WebKit intent.
So why are we prefixing that?
So right now, although we're working through kind of the standardization process, the thing that we do to be kind of good web citizens is we prefix all the objects that we create from the spec, just so that if the spec changes and another browser vendor who's implemented the specification updates theirs, then they're not relying on kind of this one intent object. They know that the WebKit intent will be potentially different to X, Y, Z intent.
So this is actually like a spec piece of functionality that we're working through right now.
Yep.
It's not like Chrome specific or anything like that. It's just with we've implemented it.
Yes,
for Chrome apps.
exactly.
Okay.
So what I'm doing now is I'm passing in the object and a special object into the WebKit intent constructor. And basically this object just describes some basic information about what we're looking for on the system.
Okay.
So we're going to look for an action of webintents.org/share.
So the question I was going to ask is the fact that you've used webintents.org as the action. So first of all, why is it a URL in the action? And second of all, does it have to be a webintents.org URL?
So yeah, good question. So the answer is, well, no, it doesn't. I'll go start off the end. It doesn't have to be just webintents.org.
Okay.
But essentially what happens is when we ask the browser for a list of services, it does a pure string match on other services that have the exact same action. So if nothing supports webintents.org/share, then we won't find it in that list. The reason why we're using a domain is because we think documentation is key to the spec. So the idea is that the share intent might live outside the W3C process, defining the specification about how to transfer data across share, how you should share images, how you should share video, and all that type of stuff. So webintents.org/share documents the best practices for sharing data. If another service provider wants to do their own version of share, then that's fine. They could do like xyzservice.com/share. The thing is that if someone invokes webintents.org/share, any application registered with XYZ won't be in that list.
Okay.
So that's all we're doing is we're basically just prefixing it. It's kind of like in Android where you have reverse, or in Java, sorry, where you have reverse domain notation, com dot whatever it is.
Gotcha.
We're kind of trying to be webby behind this whole fact. So text/HTML. So we're just going to assume that it's a HTML, like a URL to a HTML page that we're sharing.
So this is the MIME type of the data that we're going to be sending out, right?
Yes, yeah, and it doesn't have to be a pure MIME type. It could be the word person. But again, what happens is we find a list of services that support the action for share, and then we filter that list, because there might be like 10, 20, 30 different services the user's got installed for sharing data. But we want to be quite specific. We want to find the services that support this like sharing of links, essentially, text/HTML, HTML web pages. And the final thing is the payload, is the actual piece of data that we want to share. So in this case, it's just URL.value, which in theory, if all goes well, should be the value that we put into the...
Do you need to actually start the activity on that?
You're right. I would like to say I purposefully left that out, but no, I didn't. I forgot. So we have our WebKit intent object. It's not actually doing a single thing at the moment. It's just sitting there being quiet. So what we want to try and do is we want to ask the browser for a list of services.
Gotcha.
So navigator.webkit start active itty. There we go. We'll start the activity. So
that's 16 lines of code. That's pretty simple stuff for actually sharing out a URL.
And most of it is just to make it look pretty.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And you did.
I did.
Well done.
Thank you very much. So, if all goes well, test.com. We press share.
So you've now got a number of services that take text HTML links, and they've registered their intent against webintents.org/share.
Yes. So these 3 services here have said that they support the ability to share text/HTML. We have 2 installed. These are actually local to these 2 ones here are local to my machine at the moment. The share link to Twitter is actually in the Chrome Web Store, but it wouldn't work with this demo. And then we have WordPress.com, which I haven't installed, and we have the ability to add to Chrome. I'm going to share a link to Twitter.
So that was a great example of app discovery there, because you haven't got that the WordPress one installed, but it said, well, I know for a fact that this application can deal with that. It's told me that when the app was uploaded to the Chrome Web Store, so it'll offer that to you. So even if you haven't got an application installed, it's worth remembering that the Chrome Web Store can actually say, here's a number of services that can actually solve this particular issue. Which is also good for you as a developer as well, because you don't need to necessarily worry too much ahead of time about as long as you've tagged these things correctly with the correct types and so forth, that services will be matched up for you by the browser.
Yes, exactly. So as you can see, the URL has been embedded with the URL that we've shared.
Nice.
I've actually put it in, and I've also embellished it with a little bit of my own text.
Oh, that is beautifully done.
And I'm going to share it out. So now we've shared out to the World Wide Web.
That was pretty easy.
Test.com. It's probably going to be the least useful tweet you'll probably see in a while, but it's pretty cool. I like the whole idea. So that's pretty interesting, right? We've been able to build an application. Let's go to it here. Oops, I apologize. That has been able to invoke in, let's say, 16 lines of nicely formatted code, the ability to basically interconnect with another application. That's pretty cool, right? It's really hard to actually say how easy it is, although I could say how easy it is.
It is easy.
Yes. Sometimes we sound like, you seen those infomercials?
No. Oh, yeah. I know where you're going with this. This doesn't come out well for me, does it?
No.
No. Excellent.
But essentially, we've got the ability to share images, edit images. If you want to integrate with an image editing application, all you do is, rather than say share, you say edit, and then you give the data that you want to edit to the browser, which will then delegate it across to another application.
So can you send blobs?
Yes, so you can send blobs. We had a bug a while ago where if you sent a blob, it would get garbage collected, which meant on the other side you couldn't read the blob out properly.
Okay.
But I believe that's fixed now. So you could basically say, well, I have a 500 megabyte file. It's in my browser, it's in my tab, it's on my local system, and I want to deliver it to, say, I don't know, Photoshop.com, if they support an intents. They don't at the moment, but if you want to. If they did, then rather than actually passing the data through the web, you'd pass it from browser tab to browser tab. So you can these 2 applications can be made to work completely offline and talk together.
Brilliant.
Which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, especially if you're talking about large files.
Yeah, exactly. So that was pretty simple. That was just the application that invokes an intent.
So now we need to talk about the other side of this, right? Like, what if I'm making an app today and I want to be able to say, okay, I want to be able to, I can deal with, say, this share stuff or something else. How do I say, okay, I'm ready to receive intents?
Except that's right. I did a presentation the other day and I'd spelled receive incorrectly.
Across all of them?
Across every single slide. So at least I was consistent.
Consistently incorrect?
Yes.
Could be a strapline, though.
So let's build an application which receives intent data.
Yep. You might need to come down on the screen there.
Yeah, sure thing. That's a very good point. Yeoman init Chrome app. So you actually built the original Chrome app generator.
Certainly did.
So it's pretty cool.
Bolted some stuff on, didn't you?
Yes, I made it work.
Harsh. It works great, but then Chrome apps changed.
If you say Chrome apps changed 16 versions ago.
Oh yes, that's true.
Sorry.
It is worth mentioning, as we always do actually, that some of this stuff is experimental and it does change, so it is worth keeping an eye on that.
So the web intent spec is still being worked on, and it will change in response to developer feedback. Likewise, the Chrome apps APIs. So here we go. Ooh, wow, I'm doing it again. ls lar. So we'll start off with a manifest, right? The reason why we start off with the manifest is you have to be able to tell the system what you support, right? So your application needs to declare to the browser, I can share links, right? So we'll start with this. We'll do an intents declaration. It is an object array, which means it's keyed off the actual type of intent. So share. So basically what we said here is my application will be able to share. We haven't actually provided any extra information.
Okay.
But we can. It's an array because your application could, in theory, support the same action but deliver the data to multiple different places.
Ooh,
so
crazy.
Yeah, it doesn't really affect the Chrome app so much because everything technically gets delivered to the background page. But for a hosted app or an extension, you can actually choose the very specific page that you want the intent data to be delivered to.
Nice.
So here we go, type. Now you can, so you don't have to repeat yourself multiple times. You can actually say, text / star. So if anyone shares anything that is text-based.
All the texts.
All the text. So text plain, text URI list, text HTML, text JPEG. Check and see if you're listening. So type text, title. Oh man, I can't spell. Receive test. Do you want to say a random word just to prove it's live?
Truth.
Truth. Is that okay?
Yep.
For reals.
Yes.
So in the normal web intents world, inside Chrome hosted apps at least, you normally specify a href. You don't with Chrome apps because everything gets delivered to the background page, and we're going to cover that in a little minute. So that's our application has declared its intent.
Okay.
So tell you what, we might as well load it.
So the Chrome Web Store, if you were to push that app live to the Chrome Web Store, the Chrome Web Store would look at the intent.
Yes.
And sort of keep a track on that and say, okay, so if somebody then dispatches an intent with that type, I know that this application can now handle it.
Yes.
Cool.
Exactly right.
So that's all you have to do.
So this is our receive app. It's very much like the invoke app when it first came into fruition.
It's gorgeous.
It is beautiful, isn't it?
It is.
It is.
It's your finest work.
And that's the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
No, cool. So let's actually put some implementation into this. Main.js. We didn't touch main.js before in the invoke app. So main.js, it's not like main function in C and like other programming languages. We've just arbitrarily called main.js as the file that's going to be run on first run.
So this is the JavaScript that's running as our background page. We call it background page, but it's like a background script, right?
Yeah, so kind of Chrome goes through the list of scripts, injects them into a background page and runs them so they can be sequentially laid out. Now this is our declaration of saying what happens when the user clicks the button to launch the application. Well, in our case, it's pretty simple. The user will see the window here open, right? We want to do some stuff with the data that comes in. And where that happens is right at the end here, intent data. So the callback that you attach to the add listener for the onLaunched actually has a parameter called intent data. That's data that's been injected into your application from either another website or another Chrome application. So let's get into this now. We'll create a window. The interesting thing is we can, I can spell function, app window. We can get a callback from Chrome when the window is being created. Okay,
so this is that receive window that we just saw a moment ago.
Yeah.
When that gets fired up, we call this anonymous function that you're declaring now.
Yeah. So the anonymous function allows us to do a couple of things. We could manipulate the window, make it large, make it small. Minimize, maximize if we wanted to, when it's been created. But in this case, we actually get access to the DOM.
One thing that's worth pointing out here is you're accessing content window, which is it's a change, a recent change that we made.
Yeah.
So the app window that comes back is a Chrome app window.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily what you'd expect. It's not the DOM window that we're as web developers will be used to.
Yeah.
So what we do is we're accessing the DOM window element through this content window property on app window. Okay, cool.
Yes. Which allows us to inject methods, new functions, new data into a window that's just been opened. It's a little bit atypical when you think about the way that you develop applications on the web. You very rarely get access, especially when you open another remote window, you can't inject data in. But because everything's kind of like tightly contained inside this app, we give you that ability to do that, which is kind of cool because it allows us to deliver intent data to another window. So let me just, what is it? Index.html, right? We will simply put in a paragraph, oops, of ID equals result. And we will then create a script, a scropt. Oh, wow.
Or a scriopt.
A scriopt. I like inventing new tags. It should be good, right?
Yeah.
Source equals index.js. Script. Brilliant. We don't have index.js made, so let's go and make it. And I'm using Vim. We always get a lot of questions about what text editors.
Yeah.
You always use Sublime.
I do.
I'm using Vim, which is Vi improved.
Well,
I actually find that I only use like 1% of the whole. I use like insert and delete, and that's about it. And split window, as we can tell. So anyway, I get distracted really easily, don't I?
I wasn't going to say anything, but yeah.
Unload. So the window's been loaded.
Mm-hmm.
So what we should do is we should first off get a reference by ID result. It's a result. Result dot text content equals window dot intent data dot intent dot data.
So you're grabbing hold of that intent data that we injected into the page. You're grabbing the intent and then the data properties of that, and then we're going to set that as the actual value that we set out to the page.
And all this is just proving is that we can share data to the Chrome app from our existing Chrome application.
Okay.
So if this works, cool. So it looks like it didn't work, but that's because I just refreshed the page and I actually was a little bit silly. Invoke. I just need to remove Twitter for now. We found a bug about 15 minutes before this presentation. Here we go. So test.com and truth. It's not a proper URL, but we'll hopefully get the idea. Receive test truth is in there because we've added it into Chrome. It says it supports the share to share text HTML, text/HTML links at least. Select.
And there we go.
Yes, awesome.
Well done, sir.
Cool. And there's a couple of other things that you can do as well. If you want to post data back, you can just basically take the intent object and call post result, and it'll send data back to the call and application. So we have a bi-directional communication channel. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, right? Let me just uninstall this application. No, I won't uninstall it. I will go to paul.kinlan.me because I know there's not going to be anything contentious on it. We can share directly from Chrome. Receive test. If this all works, there we go.
My goodness me.
So we have Chrome app talking to Chrome app, Chrome web browser applications on the open web talking to applications that are installed inside the user's machine. So we've got multiple different ways that we can pass data across, and it's all using the same intents mechanism. It's pretty cool. I think it's pretty powerful. There's one last thing that I wanted to kind of talk about, and we're not going to, well, we're going to show a little bit of code. So here we go. I apologize about this. There we go. So this is the code I prepared earlier. Just in case anything ever goes wrong, I had backups. So, window.js, there we go. Oh, hey. Do you remember Blue Peter when they had, this is one I prepared earlier?
Yes. This is one you prepared earlier.
This is one, well actually Mihai Paparita developed, and it's in our Chrome app samples on GitHub. The reason why I want to show you this is because a couple of things. The first is that the action here is not a normal action, right? It's not http:/webintents.org. It's an action that is very specific to his application. So he's developed these two applications and he wants to talk between them. And he's basically said, well, in this remote application, I've isolated a piece of functionality which it doesn't fit into share, edit, pick. It's just very specific to my app. I just want to target that. So in the kind of the normal web intents world, I'll tell you what, if I get rid of this line, in the normal web intents world, what would happen then is the picker would appear looking for applications that are installed that says Chrome extension /app/op. Right? It's very kind of specific to his own use case. But you still get this picker, right? And what what Mihai's basically said is that I don't want the picker. I know I'm talking to my application or another application. There should be no kind of resolution of services in between and selection for the user. So he's using a thing called explicit intents. And explicit intents is this little bit here. So when you build up your WebKit intent object, if you include the word service, in theory it could be http:// a public URL which supports intents. But right now it's just like locked down to the Chrome extension namespace. And this code is basically saying that I will call an action. I'll use the web intents infrastructure to deliver data, but I will call that action up there, app2/op, directly on the Chrome extension /GUID/generated background.
So this seems like a way of shortcutting that normal process that we were saying, where you say, well, I want an application that can deal with this. You're now saying, I know specifically which application I want to deal with this, and I'm going to tell you up front, this is the application that needs to deal with this.
So the way that we positioned this when we first designed the web intent spec was to say, well, I could design multiple kind of inputs into my application for external developers to call into. But at the same time, if I've got this way of taking the data from kind of the browser and bringing it into the app, why can't I just have my own application's components orchestrate and talk to each other? So you might have like an image picker, an image editor, and a whole load of like an image saver all in one app. But you can talk to them yourself over intents, which means that you don't have to re-implement your own like page-to-page.
Yeah, it seems like a really nice way of decoupling that communication that you're planning on doing anyway, so that you can just
Yeah, you basically just reuse all the same existing architecture that you have for external parties internally inside your own app.
I like it. Sold.
Sold. And all delivered. I was going to do a really bad joke then about
really. That's unusual for you.
Yeah, infomercials and everything.
Yeah, great.
Like available in 14 days. Just give me a visa. Doesn't matter.
Don't go there.
So, I think we've finished with the old presentations. Obviously, this is my blog, which we don't need to kind of look at anymore. Should we switch back to the camera?
So we've got some questions that have been coming in. Should we go through those?
Yes.
Okay.
Questions.
So where to find out about different kinds of web intents, e.g. share. So right now, webintents.org would be the place to go to. That's where there's the specification which says how the browser is actually supposed to implement web intents themselves, but the actual webintents.org right now is acting as that kind of point of reference for for a number of specific intents, right? So like the share, pick, edit, view, save. Ooh,
subscribe.
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 I always forget subscribe.
Yes. Julian Genesto really likes the idea of subscribe, so we implemented it for him.
Cool.
But it's kind of cool, right? So yeah, we have those I think 6 core actions. They're all documented on webintents.org. Yeah, we'll see how that generally goes.
Yeah.
Just to let everyone know, we're going to move webintents.org to a more of a wiki-based architecture. Just because it's open source now, but it's on GitHub. It's kind of under some obscure directory inside GitHub, which kind of means that people aren't kind of willing to check it out and manipulate the code, manipulate the documentation. So we're going to try and move it to a wiki-based architecture so that we can kind of iterate on the best practices for each of the actions.
Yeah.
And also best guidance for how to contribute to the project.
It's a good point, because I mean, at this stage, it's there in Chrome apps. You can use it. We want people to be using it alongside their existing integrations that they're already doing, and giving actual developer feedback on how's this API to use, what would be really helpful, and all these kinds of things. And the same goes for the documentation in the wiki. Is get that feedback in, and obviously now is the time to put that in while the spec's still being formed and documentation can be updated.
Yep.
All right.
Cool.
So yeah, webintents.org for that. Okay, so being a provider requires having an installed app. How do you see web intents working for browsers without the concept of an installed web app?
Hey, sweet. So who's that from, Mr. Mahamov? Mike.
Yeah.
Cool. So the question's basically saying, well,
today it works in the Chrome ecosystem.
Today it's only in the Chrome ecosystem. It's all the applications are delivered by the Chrome Web Store. Now, the specification itself and what we tried to do from the start is basically say this idea of inter-application communication shouldn't really be tied down to one one vendor. It shouldn't be tied down to one store. So the idea behind intents was that we were going to have a tag inside HTML which basically says, well, any user agent, whether it's a search engine or whether it's something like the Chrome Web Store or just someone else's browser, can crawl the web and understand the capabilities of different websites. So you could get, I know hypothetically, you could get, say, google.com crawls ImageMater, understand, well, actually ImageMater is a bad example because it doesn't receive any data, but MemeMater receives images via the edit intent. A search engine could go along, understand that that application supports the ability to edit images, and then when someone searches for image editing software, you can kind of go, well, we know that what they're looking for. Let's give them the app instead, and then you'll click on the link. The browser in that case should then register the fact that that application can support those actions, regardless of it being installed or not. So when the user then says, well, I need to edit an image, your web application will appear in that list. So there's a couple of ways of doing it, and we're trying to do it via the intent tag so that you can have like a concise way of describing the functionality inside your application.
So the context we're talking about web intents today is Chrome apps, but it does have this sort of broader use on the web. Are there any shims or anything anything like that?
Yeah, there's webintents.org /webintents. It's almost as if you kind of set that one up for me to.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm the gift that keeps on giving, my friend.
So we have a shim. I got a message today though that the shim doesn't work in Firefox. I know about this, but I really need help actually maintaining the shim. It doesn't work in Firefox because I enabled content security policy, so people couldn't inject code or kind of basically inject anything bad into webintents.org domains if they're shared across sites, essentially.
Okay.
But it works in a really nice way. It creates an iframe that talks to its parent, the parent page will talk to webintents.org, which will then proxy the data across to other applications and in other tabs. But yeah, it needs some work. It needs some love. And if anyone wants to help make webintents.org, especially the shim, better and work better on Firefox, then please let me know. I'm also told it has some issues with IE9. But I actually believe that was because the user hadn't actually registered any external applications.
Okay. Juan asks, what's the best way to start? I'm assuming you're asking are you asking the best way to start with Chrome apps or the best way to start with web intents?
So, yes, can we flick back to our code? Google Chrome. So the best way to actually start with Chrome apps is Chrome app samples on GitHub. So if we can zoom in, there is a way of zooming in. Here we are. There we are. GitHub.com /Google Chrome /Chrome -apps -samples. That will give you a list of samples, which we're working on to kind of make a lot better and structured, a lot more make it more friendly to read through. But that will give you at least, I think, 20 or 30 different examples of the APIs that are available in Chrome apps. There's an explicit web intents demo. There's loads. There's even the Parrot AR drone demo that we made the other day.
Yeah.
So if you were available for last week and you watched the presentation that we had, we basically we showed you how to build or interact with an AR drone using normal network sockets.
In this case, the one you probably want is the Hello World sample, which will actually go through that process. Also, as we said before, if you look at yeoman.io, you can also install that. That has a Chrome app generator, which you can then use to actually create effectively a Hello World application. It'll do all that work for you, and then you can actually look at what it writes out and just kind of dissect that yourself. So there are a couple of ways that you can actually get that code.
Yep, and if you want to get started on web intents, webintents.org should get you started. If you have any problems with the documentation, it's a bug. We need to fix that. Please let us know. Paul Kinlan at google.com or on any of the GitHub issues. But we want to make that documentation better so you can just get started like that.
All right.
And was that the last question? Can we do this one from anon at the end?
Yeah, I guess. Could you go into a bit of detail on why extras were removed? How much would you say the intents concept diverges from the Android original now? And what are the key distinctions between the two presently?
Yep.
And are there any chances of them diverging even further?
So to deal with the first one, why extras, a bit of detail about why extras were removed. We found the API really cumbersome. So when you made an intent object, then you would call get extra or set extra. And we were talking about having, say, a dictionary of extra pieces of metadata that you would pass on instead.
Okay.
So make it from like 10 API calls to set 10 variables to be one API call with the dictionary. But even that, people wanted to pass extra data, and this is all kind of come back from developer feedback, and especially on the specification group, is that developers just wanted to package that up into one payload right at the start. So when you declare your action and type, you also declare your data, and that data will, we only used a string today, which was incorrect of me, but it was for more of kind of rapid prototyping. It will turn into an object, and the object will then include, if you're saving a file, would include file name, size. If you want to share an image, it might include width dimensions, width and height dimensions at least. The point being, though, is that all of this should be documented in best practices, and this will come through the wiki that we're hopefully going to launch in the near future, at least. So that's why we did extras. The API we didn't like the API. It didn't feel natural, and we just wanted it to be one object that you pass into your WebKit intent object. Likewise with the second question, how much would you say the intent? It diverged a little bit. We have a similar concept from Android intents, at least, where we have the action, which essentially is a string. Android, it's a reverse domain notation. Ours is obviously a normal domain.
Conceptually, though, they're the same, right? You sort of your app says, look, I want to do this thing, and another app basically says, oh, I can do that thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So conceptually it's the same. If you look at how you pass extra data, Android does differ from Chrome right now, and we're not at the point where we're going to have the two systems interact and operate just yet, I don't think. So we want to make the best experience for web developers, and not all kind of Java-based APIs fit into the web ecosystem. So we want to make the best API for web developers to get their applications talking together, because, and I'll just kind of mention this, is a lot of people want to talk to native apps. They want to talk to the network via web intents, and they want to talk to kind of like Android apps or something from, say, the Chrome browser on Android itself. The main goal of web intents is to get web developers making applications which are more connected than they are now. So we're trying to solve that problem to start off with, and then we'll get to the problems at some point in the future.
Okay, cool. There's one final question that's just popped in. Any plans to add quick links to disable or remove extensions, I guess apps as well, directly on the intent picker? Found myself wanting to do so after installing several at a time to try, and it's a bit unwieldy jumping to the extensions page since you forget which one. Well, first of all, this is really good actual real-world feedback, so thank you for that. That's the first thing.
So we've got defaulting in place. Oh, how annoying.
This is one of the
so yeah, we got defaulting. Let me just... So defaulting is basically so you don't have to keep selecting the same intent.
Yeah, so
again.
it's like, but at the moment, am I right? It's if you select a service, it's going to automatically use that the second.
Yeah, the second time round. But the thing that happens, and we'll show you in a second, if we do this, we've only got like a minute left. We share page. So ideally, we want to be able to manage the list of applications that appear here from here, right? It's a really great piece of feedback. I'll pass it to the engineering team. If I don't do it anytime soon, crbug.com is the place to go.
Cool.
Let me share to Gmail. This is an extension that we've written. There's a little nib up here called use another app. So what happens with defaulting is that defaulting always calls the one that you last used, which is always the same one if you don't use a different app. So use another app will basically say, well, I'm going to go back to the picker, and then let you reselect another app. And there's a bug in the platform apps, the packaged app stuff, where it doesn't actually have that little nib to say, I want to use a different application. So if you actually use like the application that we had today, it'll keep going to it until you uninstall it, which is a known bug and hopefully should be fixed. So,
okay, awesome. Well,
I think that was it. I think we're done. 45 minutes. Thank you for your questions. We're going to be here again next week.
Yep.
The way that these work is we are trying to get as much feedback as possible about what you want to hear, right? Because we have a whole series of talks that we want to talk about, but if you want to know about how to build applications which do networking, and I know Paul did one last week, but if you want to learn more about networking, please let us know, because we will tailor our presentations and kind of this to suit your needs, right? So if you want to know how to do Hello World again, we'll probably start with, we could do that one and then kind of go into some more advanced stuff. But
let us know what you want. I mean, certainly now is the time to give us that feedback. We can tailor accordingly, as Paul said. So.
Yep.
But in the meantime, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, thank you very much. Bye.